Good evening, it's meteorologist Michael Fecca. Welcome back to the 9 p.m. all-weather, all-streaming show that we do here every night during the workdays and on weekends. We stream it out to all of our streaming platforms, including Facebook and YouTube. So if you're joining from either place, please feel free to leave us a question or a comment. Hopefully I'll be able to go through them all as I go through the forecast, but if not, I'll go through at the very end and see if I can answer anything individually for you. But let's go ahead and get started with a look at that radar. So we had that area of low pressure that's still sitting and spinning over the northern plains that's pushing into the Great Lakes. That brought in some severe weather across portions of Iowa, northern Illinois, and even southern Wisconsin. Still seeing a few warnings there just south of the Chicago area. And we too were on alert for that potential of a few severe thunderstorms as that initial line pushed in from the west. But with good news and not as much instability and fuel for those storms to work with, a lot of them actually weakened into just a few passing showers by the time they made it into the tri-state. So we didn't end up seeing any severe thunderstorm warnings earlier this evening, but that's all good news anyway. We still have that chance for a few sprinkles or even an isolated storm through the rest of the night tonight, but I think as far as the severe weather threat goes, at least for this evening, I think it's pretty much over. It will pick back up again starting very early Friday morning, which is why we still have that alert in place for Friday. But taking a look at the severe risks, you can see they've been drastically reduced compared to what they were earlier. We were looking at that level 1 and 2 risk of wind and even a few tornadoes earlier. They scaled that back just down to that level 1 risk, hardly even grazing portions of the I-64 corridor there, mainly north of I-64. You could still get some gusty winds, and they still have that 2% tornado risk, but I think that's mostly timing-wise for early Friday morning, so not necessarily the rest of this evening or overnight. And I'll show you here on our future radar what I'm talking about. Through the rest of the night, I think we could pick up, again, just a few passing showers, maybe an isolated storm here or there, but for the most part, we dry out into the overnight hours. Now, I do think there is still that chance for another area of storms to move in from the northwest, but again, and that's early starting tomorrow morning. So that's why I still think the SPC has that risk for some severe weather, even though it's for Thursday. These outlooks go from 7 a.m. to 7 a.m. So it accounts for those early morning hours and that potential. But a lot of the models don't really have that line working its way into the tri-state. So again, I think for the rest of this evening, the alert is over. Again, we have a few passing showers, maybe a lingering storm out there, but nothing severe as you're headed to bed. Temperatures drop down into the mid 60s. And then, as I mentioned, picking back up early tomorrow morning, we still have that potential for some isolated severe storms. Still a lot lower of a risk compared to what we were expecting earlier this evening. So we keep that alert in there just for that safety. But it is going to be breezy and warm. Gusts up to 20 miles per hour out of the southwest are expected through our Friday. Temperatures climb back up into the lower 80s. So here's what we're talking about for Friday. And again, mainly it's for this decaying line of storms moving in from the northwest. Again, a lot of these models do have it weakening and not really reaching the tri-state, but if they do, it could still pose some gusty winds and maybe even a brief tornado early Friday morning. And then we still have that isolated severe risk, mainly along and north of I-64 through Friday morning. And I think by the time we get into Friday afternoon, outside of a few spotty showers, we're looking at a mostly dry afternoon, and then we'll dry out completely headed into Friday evening. But that's all going to be out ahead of another cold front that's going to be sliding in for Saturday. But as far as the severe risks for the day on Friday, it's only going to be for that potential for some gusty winds or maybe even some small hail. But looking ahead to our Friday, again, we're looking at that cold front, Saturday, we're looking at that cold front moving in potentially into southern Illinois very early Saturday morning, but it does lose steam once again as it pushes through the tri-state initially. So we'll have lingering showers, even a few rumbles of thunder there through Saturday afternoon before this all clears off to our east, headed into Saturday night. And then we'll clear out through the overnight hours, and then we'll cool down and dry out just in time time for Easter Sunday. But in terms of any severe weather risk for Saturday, we are currently not outlooked. We are just looking at some general thunderstorms moving through the area. We have better chances for severe weather farther off to our north and east in the upper Ohio River Valley, and then farther off to our southwest along the Mississippi River Valley. So here for Saturday, still just expecting plain old showers and storms. Now, what we are expecting is maybe some potentially heavy rain embedded within that band of showers moving through. So we could pick up a quick inch, maybe inch and a half across the tri-state just throughout the day on Saturday. And that does pose at least an isolated flash flooding risk with some of that rain. So not expecting anything widespread flooding wise, but you could get some ponding on roadways and areas that typically do flood, or poor drainage areas anytime that it rains. So keep that in mind for Saturday. There is probably a lot of Easter egg hunts happening on Saturday, so it is going to be a fairly soggy and muddy day. You maybe want to think about moving those Easter egg hunts somewhere indoors. But again, luckily, that cold front moves in and out of here by the time Saturday ends. So that will dry us out, but cool us down for the day on Easter Sunday. Temperatures only climb up into the upper 50s by Sunday afternoon, but we'll see partly to mostly sunny skies for the second half of the weekend. And in terms of temperatures here, we'll straddle around average or even slightly below through the beginning of the work week, Monday into Tuesday, before we start to climb back up above average by the middle and end of next week. So we'll warm up slightly by Monday, topping out in the lower 60s, but then back down into the upper 50s by Tuesday, and then climbing back up into the upper 60s to lower 70s by Wednesday and Thursday. And the good news is, it looks like we stay dry during much of next week, at least through Thursday. We don't have much in the way of any rain chances headed our way. So after a fairly soggy end of the work week here, we've had some showers and storms move through yesterday. Today we'll have some more tomorrow, and on Saturday we'll have a nice little break from all the rainfall here headed into next week. And looking ahead at the Climate Prediction Center outlook for the next 8 to 14 days for temperatures, we continue to warm up, especially along the eastern half of the United States. You can see a large area of those deeper reds, including portions of the tri-state, showing that we'll likely have above average temperatures there headed into the middle of the month. So the warm up continues, and in terms of rainfall, it looks like the more active pattern still sets up to our west through areas like the southern plains, Oklahoma, Texas, up towards Kansas, Nebraska, into portions of Missouri, Iowa, and northern Illinois, and then up into the Great Lakes. It looks like they have an even greater risk for above average precipitation. But here in the tri-state, we may see some slightly above average rainfall amounts here, but nothing too crazy. We may end up just closer to average for this time of year. But that is kind of the latest on the forecast. Here's a look at that 7-day, just to kind of recap it. Again, we aren't on alert here for the rest of this evening. I think at large that severe weather threat has come to an end, but it does pick back up early tomorrow morning. We're tracking out maybe another decaying line moving in from the northwest. Early Friday, that may impact your morning commute. And then we have that chance of, a few more severe storms. Again, a very isolated risk along and north of I-64 through the rest of the day on Friday. So that's why we have that alert mainly for the first half of the day on Friday. I think by the time we get into Friday afternoon and Friday evening, we'll pretty much be drying out by that point. So I think that alert will probably be able to come to an end by that point. But then looking ahead to Saturday, we still have that cold front sliding in from the west, starting Saturday morning and continuing through the afternoon and evening hours. So it's going to be on the soggier side for our Saturday, but at least we're not outlooked for any severe weather at this time. So that's good news. We're just expecting your typical old rain showers or thunderstorms. But behind that front, we do clear out and dry out headed into Sunday. So Easter Sunday, cooler as well, topping out in the upper 50s, and then we'll stay on the cooler side through the beginning of the work week, only in the lower 60s, which is right around average, and then back below average into the upper 50s by Tuesday, and then we climb up above average for Wednesday and Thursday of next week. But it is looking fairly dry through much of next week, so more in the way of sunshine next week than what we saw this week. So that is all good news. Let me go ahead and check out some of the comments. Suzanne says, good evening. She said it was surely a windy day. Yes, we had gusts of up to 35 miles per hour here in the Evansville area, and they even had a wind advisory just off to our west and to our north for gusts upwards of 40 miles per hour. So definitely a very breezy day. Lenny Howard says good evening from Whitesville, Kentucky. Thank you for joining us. Jeanette says good evening. Good evening to you. William with a rainfall report. Just a trace here by Bosse Field. Yeah, we saw a lot of those storms pretty much just a weekend as they crossed over. 60s to 80s in the daytime and 60s at night is the best temperature for me and my electric bill, says Chris Smith. I agree. Hopefully, even with all these temperature fluctuations, you've been able to just hold off on any air or heating so you can save a little bit on that electric bill. Cheyenne says, so sleep with my weather radio on. I think that's still a good idea. Again, not really expecting any severe weather here through much of this evening, but again, early tomorrow morning, you may still catch a couple of warnings, especially to the northwest of Evansville, north of I-64. I think that's where you'll see the best chance for that. So of course, yeah, I would still sleep with that weather radio on and have your alerts turned on with the ringer, just in case you do catch a stray warning, but we aren't under any sort of watch or anything like that. So it doesn't look like a huge slam dunk threat for severe weather by any means. It is a very marginal, isolated risk for a severe storm. James, for the rest of this evening and pretty much towards midnight, I think we'll be okay. We're not really on alert for anything. We may see a passing shower or an isolated storm, but I think in terms of the severe weather, that's pretty much over with, but it does pick back up early Friday morning. So I'd say generally after 3 a.m. Is when that alert would go back into effect. But again, it's a fairly isolated risk for a severe storm. So we're not expecting anything widespread here, just kind of giving you a heads up there with that alert day for tomorrow. And he's also asking about the rain for Saturday. He's asking if it will taper off as the day goes on. I think it'll probably start, to our west early in the morning, areas like southern Illinois, getting into that by mid to late morning, and then pushing into the heart of the tri-state through the afternoon and into the first part of the evening, and then eventually tapering off. It's going to be kind of a slow-moving band of rain, so that's why we have that potential for a little bit more in the way of rainfall and that isolated flooding risk. But it will start to taper off by Saturday evening. So overnight Saturday will dry out and clear out. So that's what will set us up for a nicer second half of the weekend, albeit colder for Easter Sunday, but at least we'll see that sunshine pop back out, temperatures topping out only in the upper 50s. No need to be sorry. I'm happy to answer any questions for you, even if you show up a little late to our weather show. That's what we look at the comments for. But hopefully I answered your question. But that is all I'm seeing here for the comments. So I am going to hop off the live stream and I'll send you guys over to 14 News at 10 for all the latest news and weather headlines. Until then, everybody, have a great rest of your night and stay safe, and we'll see you again tomorrow.